Being successful in fantasy football is all about how you manage your roster, and with the trade deadline coming really soon for most fantasy leagues, it's imperative that we focus on the waiver wire. But you know what? Sometimes it's not just about selecting the right players for the upcoming week, but also looking towards the future to see which ones have the ideal schedule for the fantasy playoffs. What we're doing in this video is I'm going to be presenting you 5 different players. Each one has a different reason as to why they should be in your roster for this upcoming week and why they could be even valuable for the upcoming fantasy playoff push that you need to be preparing for your fantasy leagues. And the first player we're going to be going over is going to be Colston Loveland, tight end from the Chicago Bears. And for those of us that were high on him during the offseason, like myself, we can finally take a breath of relief. He finally had that breakout game. He was phenomenal with 6 receptions, 7 targets, 118 yards, 2 touchdowns, and it was fantastic seeing him really leverage the great volume that he's been seeing over the past couple weeks. He had played 81% of the snaps, and now this is a wonderful opportunity to go swoop him up because he is still rostered in 23.6% of ESPN rosters. And with the unfortunate news that we are seeing with Tucker Kraft out with a ACL tear, you may be depleted at the tight end position, but don't you worry. Colston Loveland is someone that you need to be spending a high amount of fab on to secure a very strong tight end for the upcoming playoff push. Now, he does also have a very favorable schedule over the next 3 weeks. He goes up against the New York Giants, the Minnesota Vikings, and the Pittsburgh Steelers, all matchups that are phenomenal for any tight end that is going up against those respective teams. Colston Loveland, for me, becomes a primary option for you to target off the waiver wire as we get ready for week 10. This next player is someone that would have surprised me to say the least, but it's going to be Alec Pierce, wide receiver out of the Indianapolis Colts. And it was phenomenal. He had 13 targets. He was able to haul in 6 of those for 115 yards. He also led all Colts pass catchers, not only in targets, but in snap percentage with 71 snaps logged in for that matchup that he had in week 9. Now, he has been seeing an increase in involvement over the past couple weeks. And just to speak on how involved he has been with this Colts offense, he has averaged a total of 9 targets, 94 yards, and has been a wide receiver 16 during this stretch. And it has been phenomenal to see Daniel Jones utilizing the speed that Alec Pierce is able to provide for this Indianapolis offense, and someone that is currently only rostered right now in 11.8% of ESPN leagues. We already know that this offense is going to flow through Jonathan Taylor, and we also know that there are some pretty effective pass catchers there with Michael Pittman Jr. as well as tight end Tyler Warren. But I believe that Alec Pierce is already solidifying himself as a strong option that you can rely on, especially considering that he is someone that has a high ceiling that you can utilize in your flex spot. Someone that I didn't think was going to be really solid, but actually was, is going to be Parker Washington, wide receiver out of the Miami Dolphins. Currently, he's only rostered in 5.1% of ESPN leagues, and when you look at his game log that he had this past week, he looked great. He had 8 receptions on 9 targets for 90 yards, led all Jacksonville Jaguars pass catchers with 88% of the snaps played, and he also led all pass catchers for the Jaguars in targets. Now, going into the bye week, he had a fantastic game versus the Rams where he had 10 targets, but he continued that same kind of involvement this past week as well. With the unfortunate news that Travis Hunter was placed on the IR, we're seeing that Washington is continuing to see involvement within this offense, and someone that you should be leveraging as someone that you should be adding to your rosters as we get ready to face another tough week of bye weeks in week 10. And we have 2 more players to go over, but before we do so, most of you that watch these videos aren't already subscribed, so do me a solid. If you are getting value in these videos, hit that like button as well as the subscribe button. Let's go over these last 2 players. And this next player that you're going to be adding is going to be Devin Singletary, running back out of the New York Giants. Currently, he's rostered in 4.5% of ESPN leagues, and I know that most fantasy managers, including myself, were looking to add Tyrone Tracy, considering that he was actually rostered in 80+ leagues last week. However, unfortunately, we saw that Devin Singletary was highly involved, and I get it. This past week, he only had 8 carries, 43 yards, 2 receptions on 2 targets for 8 yards. Nothing crazy. However, one thing to note is he did out-touch Tracy in this matchup. Tracy did have 5 carries, 18 yards, also had 3 catches on 4 targets for 19 yards, and nothing glaring here, but Singletary did have 56% of the snaps played versus Tracy's 44%, and I understand that this was a very negative game script for the Giants that were playing from behind for this matchup versus the 49ers, and they only rushed the ball 18 times versus the 32 times that they attempted a pass in this game, and Jackson Dart actually had 8 of those 18 rushes that they had. My advice here is to monitor this running back room very closely. I don't anticipate game scripts like this to be a frequent thing. However, if there's to be a shift for this running back room's involvement, it's better to get out in front of it right now while his roster percentage is very low at 5.6%. So I would anticipate that you should spend no more than 5 or 10% of FAB to secure Devin Singletary on your fantasy roster. This last player that you're going to be adding is going to be Olamide Zaccheaus, wide receiver out of the Chicago Bears. Now, he was only rostered in 1.2% of ESPN leagues, and he had a fantastic game. 6 receptions, 8 targets, 58 yards, 1 touchdown, played 64% of the snaps, and actually, it's crazy because he's the wide receiver 3 in the Chicago offense, but you saw Loveland go off, and we didn't see Rome Odunze do much, and I don't expect this to be the case by any means as far as rest of season. However, one thing that makes him intriguing for me is because of the week 10 buys. We're seeing players such as Jamar Chase, CeeDee Lamb, T. Higgins, George Pickens, even Ted McMillan out. So you may be going into week 10 with a void at the wide receiver position, and I believe that Zaccheaus, at the very least, becomes someone that you can add into your flex spot because the Bears are going up against the New York Giants, which actually allow the 7th most points to opposing wide receivers. So Zaccheaus, someone that you should be adding, especially if you are looking to deal with some bye weeks coming into week 10. Hey, you made it to the very end of the video. Thank you so much for watching. It means the absolute world to me. And hey, if you're getting value in these videos, do me one huge solid. Hit that like button as well as the subscribe button. Best of luck to you as you look to bolster up your rosters as we get into week 10. Be sure to tune in to the very end of the week as I drop a video to go over some trade targets that you need to be getting ready for as the fantasy deadline for trades comes up really soon. In the meantime, take care. God bless. Peace.